Hey, loves. Now, darlings, we've got a choice at every moment of whether we're going to play out the victim story in our life or the victor, the winner's story. So I can use myself as an example here. Now, my life has been really quite challenging. I know most of ours have. But the beginning part of my life, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And that's pretty darn tough. I mean, that's not a religion, that's a cult. That's not a good space to be or to grow up. But it wasn't good for me anyway. And then my father chose to die because he refused a blood transfusion, because that's according to the cult's wishes to refuse blood. Anyway, he died when I was 2, and the rest of my childhood was really abusive, and I ran away at 16, and obviously ran away from that cult too. So it sounds like my story is I could be a real victim, couldn't I, there with that story. We won't go into details about how horrible it was, but I can leave that to your imagination. So I could be repeating over and over again the victim story, but I chose to run away. So here we go. That's the part. It's like, the victor, the winner, the champion of the story. I run away from myself. But that wasn't easy, because in that cult, we weren't allowed to mix with anyone else outside the religion or the cult. So there was no support system, which meant I was homeless on the streets for a while. And even now I look back and because I don't feel very street smart, because I was brought up in a very sheltered way. So to be homeless on the streets at 16 was really quite terrifying. Now, years later, I met a man who I fell in love with and later married. But unfortunately, that didn't turn out well for me. In fact, he was really controlling, and I'm sure he wasn't that happy too with me. So it wasn't the happiest of marriages, but we did have 2, and we do have 2 gorgeous daughters. So I'm very grateful to that marriage. But it scarred me, and the narcissistic abuse that went on during that wasn't an easy time for him or for me, I don't think. Okay, now the rest of my story gets even more interesting, but I'll hold that back for another video. But what I'm saying is, it depends how we relay the story. Now, I could really, really harp on about all the horrible things that happened to me and play them over and over in my head, repeat them over and over to people, and be the proper old victim in my story. And sometimes I've genuinely felt like that, definitely in my 20s. But I'm sure that's the reason why I got cancer in my late 20s. And I think I just hadn't processed all this hatred and resentment and the victim story. So the way that I can change my story, and I've learnt through emotional intelligence throughout the years, to change my story from the poor me victim story, they did this to me, and then I got cancer when my 2 daughters were just very, very little. My youngest was just a baby, and had cancer, very extreme cancer, for 2 years, and had to have full stem cell transplant in the end. So it was really quite intense. But I could harp on about that, or I could tell you about the victor side, the winner story. And that's the key is how we rise and rise and rise again, no matter what adversity we've experienced, and how we take full responsibility for our part in the process. Now, when it comes to abuse, I'm not taking full responsibility for that, because I was a child, and I also not taking responsibility for my dad dying, choosing to die when he was 2. All those things did happen to me in my life, but it's how we choose to not let it affect our present or our future. That's how we turn into the victor. That's how we turn into that archetype. And so that's how we can move on into forgiveness. And that's emotional intelligence in action. That these things happened to me, but they didn't make me. They made me into this badass woman that I am today because I chose to not let it define me anymore. And that's the work I do. That's as I'm a coach, I'm a mentor in emotional intelligence. It's all about the emotional mindset. It's all about getting to know our archetypes and developing them and pulling on the right ones that we need to get through life in a happy, contented, badass way of loving yourself. So check out what I do, darling. I'd love to work with you and get you to this place too. Love you.